Let's talk. Yes, I may only be 40 years old, but I'm an empty nester, and let me explain. Well, for the last 4 years, I've been coming up here and checking on Herman and helping Herman. For the first 2 years, it was probably once a week or so, maybe twice a week. And then for the last 2 years, it's been every single day I've been up here. Come up, checked on him, made sure he was okay, brought food to him, did his firewood, sat down and had good conversations with him. And that has been happening for 4 years now. Well, as of just this week, Herman went down to stay with his sister for the winter. Now, this is the first real big window that he's been gone. And I have to say, it took me a couple days of just moping around, kind of mourning the fact that I didn't have what I've realized is one of my closest friends, which I know he was a really close friend, but it's just different when all of a sudden somebody's here and the next day you show up and the person that you come and say hi to every day and that you enjoy talking and hearing the same stories. He tells me the same stories over and over again, but I love them.
One day they had in the winter time, it was cold. They had me working up there on the mill pond down there.
Yeah.
I was doing pretty good, pushing log, doing pretty good. But then all at once I got onto a big log, but a short one, very short one. And all at once that sucker started going round and round and round and round. Pretty soon I couldn't keep up no more and in the drink I went.
That person isn't here and it felt really weird. Yesterday was really foggy. We came up, we did a little bit of work, but today I'm up here by myself. And some of it I'm just processing. So about 4 years ago, Herman, his niece and his sister came down to our place and they were taking photos. I came outside, asked them what they were doing. They told me, well, this is Grandpa's old place. From there, me and Herman built a relationship, a great relationship. So I bought this 100-year-old farm from Herman. When you take over a property that has 65 years of, we'll call it development, for somebody like me who has a full-time job and a homestead, when we got this place, it was kind of a dream. Like we were like, holy smokes. And now it was like, now we have to take care of it. It's got tons of grapes and tons of apples and all this stuff, and everything had been neglected-ish because Herman's just older. So it's not his fault. It's just kind of what happens. And so I've had to start figuring out, how do I maintain this property and not lose my mind and balance the work and life, because I already have a 9-to-5. Plus, we have the homestead, and I have 4 kids and a wife. And all that has forced me to make some hard decisions. Some of those hard decisions have been scaling back some of what is here. When we bought the place, I didn't have a vision for the place. I didn't really know what we were going to do with it. I just knew that it was a prime location, had beautiful apple trees, beautiful grapes, great forest, and all kinds of just great potential. So we bought it. And since then, I've kind of taken on a project here and a project there and kind of spread myself a little thin. So I'm not going to do that anymore. Here's what we're going to do. We are focusing on what I'm going to call the lower portion of the farm. We're going to come in, we're going to work around the old cabin. We're going to finish the cooler for us. We're going to work around the old barn, and we're going to finish the area around the greenhouse, because there's a lot that needs to be done here. Let me explain. One thing is we need to put in a drainage system so we can collect the water that runs off of the greenhouse during the year. We also need to come in and get set up for putting a little greenhouse right here. And this greenhouse is where we're going to do all our starts. We're going to start our plants, because currently I really don't have anywhere where I can do starts. And you're like, well, you have your greenhouse. Right, but once that's going, it's going to be a little awkward to be doing starts and everything in one little spot. So I have a little 20 by 40 greenhouse a friend of mine gave me, and we're going to put that right here. We're going to do some really special stuff with that too. I'll show you. The other thing we have is we have this great little orchard with some really beautiful old trees. When I say old trees, there's an apple tree over here that's a monster. Look at this old thing. I mean, it is the bottom of that trunk. The bottom of that trunk has got to be almost 3 feet wide. And it just hasn't been, you can see branches have broken off. It has not been maintained. It is a mess. This is just one of many trees in here that need to be pruned back, given some love. Breaking this property into bite-sized chunks is something I've struggled with. And I think the reason why I struggled with it is I didn't want to step on Herman's toes. because he was living here. Now, he's still going to live here. Whenever he wants to come back, he'll come back and he'll live here. He's not here right now, and so it gives me some time to get some of the stuff done. We're going to slowly clean up and manicure and deal with this portion of the farm. And these are the boys. They're going to help me. They help me almost every day because, well, they're homeschooled. And so being homeschooled gives them the ability to come up when school's done and give me a hand. This is the other side of Herman's cabin. This is where Herman did his garden the last 2 years. He used to do it in the greenhouse, but because of his age and how little mobility he has, he just does it right here next to his cabin. And so we're gonna come in, we're gonna clean out the blackberry and stuff along here around the backside of the garage. Trees like this one right here, they're just leaving a bunch of apples on top of his place. So we're gonna prune some of this back. He's asked me not to prune it too much. So this is the plan. We are going to slowly clean up this area. I've talked about cleaning this up. We've done so much cleanup. We've done 3 loads of scrap to the scrap yards. I've done so much cleaning up, recycling stuff, plastic buckets, all kinds of stuff. You wouldn't believe the amount of stuff that we've pulled out of here. So I've gone in, I've used images from my drone as well as satellite images, topographical data, as well as a program called Illustrator. So this first image I'm going to show you is actually from 2016. This is what this area looked like back then. And you can see some of this area is starting to become a little overgrown, but you can also see Herman's still able to do some upkeep, do some tilling, mow, that kind of thing. This is earlier this year. This image is from Google Earth. Google Earth, I find, is a great app to use when you're trying to plan out your homestead and stuff like that, especially if you don't have a drone. But as we go through, I want to show you kind of the transition just this year. So the next set of images, and when I say a set of images, is these are multiple images I've kind of like pieced together from my drone. And you're going to see this is pretty much currently what this looked like early this year. So this was probably around July. And you can see there is definitely some issue, especially down in the bottom left-hand corner with the grapes. Those grape rows, you can see a lot of light colored green, and those are maple. And there's maple, there's Doug fir in here. There's a ton of blackberry that have grown up. And these aren't like, this is the first year these blackberry have been there. It is dense. And you can also see to the right, you can see the area that I'm about to clear out. And when I clear this out, this is the area we put the cover crop in. And so as we move forward in time, here you go, I've actually come in and I've terraced that area to the right. And you can see I cleaned out all the blackberry and we're starting to terrace this and we're getting this prepped for cover cropping and eventually for putting figs in there. You can see where the cover crop is taken. It looks beautiful. It's nice and dark green. It looks absolutely luscious. And I'm obviously not done with all of this. As these lines get closer together, those are 25 feet of drop between each line. You know, in that one little area right there where I'm going to be putting the figs, there's 25 feet of drop from the top to the bottom. Now, as we go over to where the grapes are at, you can see that's actually flattened off quite a bit, and it's fairly flat. It's got a little bit of a roll to it, but it's good. All right, now let's look at what I'm talking about when I use some of these tools for planning. So right here, you can see the dark red lines are where we're going to have figs, and in a couple cases, there's already some figs there. The green with red are trees. They're some type of fruit tree, and the size is kind of based off the age of the tree. The bigger ones are just an older tree. In my head, that's kind of how I organize all this. And as we go through, these are the trees that we're going to be keeping. Now, there are a few trees here and there we're not going to be taking out. I'm not taking out the big oaks, the beech, but there's some other trees, little like fruit trees in here that are just a little too tight, or in some cases in really bad shape. I'm going to create some distance so we can get some air flowing through, so I have less scab and less damage to my fruit. Let's talk about the grape area. You can see that big green, light green triangle. That area is going to be cleared out along with the green, dark green square. So we've taken what was probably 20 rows of grapes down to 7. The main reason why is a lot of this, as you're going to see as I show you me tearing it out, it was just infested with blackberry. So infested with blackberry and maple and other stuff, it was going to be almost impossible to come in and really get it cleaned up. That is one of the hard decisions that I've had to make while trying to process and figure out how to balance and not burn out. And that's the biggest thing, because if I'm honest with you, well, you know, I basically work all day until it's time for bed. I get about 8 hours of sleep every night. And other than that, I'm working. Whether I'm working my 9 to 5 or I'm working on a homestead or a farm, I'm working. There's not a whole lot of vacation time. There's not a whole lot of downtime. I get a little here and there, but not much. How have I dealt with that? Is I've realized I need to focus on pinpoint things, bite-sized parts of this property, of all the properties, but bite-sized bits. And so for me, that was scaling down some of the stuff that was just so big, I wasn't able to get to it. You know, there's still a lot of blackberry in here. We're gonna have to go in and rip out. Some of that's gonna have to be done by hand. A lot of these grape rows are gonna be restrung in a different manner. So dealing with this now seems reasonable. It's 6 rows. I can do 6 rows. Me and the boys can go through and do 6 rows, rip out the blackberry, actually dig up the root balls, and that's a couple days of work. So my plan is for the light green area this coming year, I'm going to be planting a lot of things for pigs to eat. A lot of squashes, a lot of pumpkins, radishes, some beets. And this area is going to be a little bit more rough. The reason why I'm going to let this area be a little bit more rough is I'm doing a lot of disturbing of the soil, and I also am not done disturbing the soil there. The reason I'm not done disturbing the soil is because it had grapes there, it had blackberry, it had maple, it had Doug fir, it had all kinds of just random stuff growing up. And so while I'm going in, I'm ripping as much of that root system out. Over the next year, I'm going to see more of that. So once we get into next fall and we harvest and I've fed everything to the pigs and maybe the goats come in and cleaned it up, we're going to go through and see what else has sprouted up and go in and clear those root systems out. So over the next couple years, we'll have a much better area to plant while we've got a lot of the woody stuff out. And the main reason for getting that woody stuff out is because when we go in and we turn this into more of a market garden type of setup, I don't want to be fighting all these kind of woodier, more resilient type of plants. I want it gone. I want to be able to have a nice clean area to work, to be able to put in no dig beds, because that's what we're going to be doing. In the dark green area, I believe we're going to be going in and putting kale, Swiss chard, orach. Orach is called like a mountain spinach. It's a taller kind of spinach. You just take the leaves off. It's really good. Maybe some broccoli. So the other thing that has changed is my work. My work has gone from allowing us to work remotely to not allowing us to work remotely. Now, what is that change around the farm? Well, it means I have about an hour and a half of commuting a day. So instead of not having to commute, I get an extra hour and a half a day to work around the farm and do that kind of stuff. I no longer have that time. I end up having to go in the office, which means I'm going to be gone earlier and home later. That's going to affect a lot of what we do around here. So I'm probably going to be downscaling the number of videos I put out. So I think we're going to go down to 1 or 2 videos a week, depending on the content, depending on what I'm able to work on, depending on how busy of a week it is. We are going to get to work. I think I'm going to start by going and letting the goats out. So let's go let the goats out, because that's what we do in the winter. We let them graze through the woods, and then at night we put them away, and it works really, really well. So let's go up there and get our goats set free.